Oh, yeah. That was great. That was really fun. Yeah, what a start to 2025. Okay, as I was saying before I was rudely interrupted by my technology, welcome. Welcome to 2025. Thank you for logging in. Happy New Year. If I haven't seen you already, you may have seen, if you're on Patreon, you may have seen the video that I put out um, early this year, very early this year. It was meant for December. It was supposed to be the December post, but I had a scheduling issue, another technical issue, which I seem to be plagued with at the moment. However, I hope you've watched the video if you were interested in it, if that was your jam. And if you have any questions on that, let me know. I am here to assist. So, yeah, 2025. What are we going to do in 2025 on this channel? It's a good question, something that I've been mulling over quite a lot. I plan to ramp up the live streaming or make it a mainstay, like a staple of the channel. So I'll be doing a bit of that. And so I hope you can join me on this adventure. There are a couple of reasons for um, doing live streams if you're not kind of across it. Live streams seem to be a really, really simple way of me producing content compared to the way that I was producing content before, which was producing what I called video logs, but they were like video essays, um, which, take a lot of work. There's a lot of productive work that goes into that, production work that goes into that. If were used to any of my videos before, you would have noticed that I might have put out, usually in the range of 5 to 15 minute videos, usually around the 10-minute mark. And that takes just hours and hours of scripting, filming, audio, editing, like everything. And so I'm able to do the same thing with live streams, but they're just way more productive. I can get so much more content out and I can clip from them. So I can actually produce more content now by doing the live stream avenue. Yo, yo, yo. What's up? What's up? What's up? 4IS. I'm glad that someone is out there so they can confirm for me whether or not this is now working again. I hope it is. Can you see the audio and the visual synced up okay? It seems to think I've got a good connection over here. No, it's actually saying the opposite now. It's saying the connection is bad. This is just not my day today. Far out. Yeah, the audio and video is synced. Okay. And is it like laggy? No, it's good. Okay, fair enough. Well, I take that back. Take back everything I said. It seems to be working okay. This is really hard to do on the fly. Far out, can I just say? Um, Sorry, I'm just trying to change some posts to give the new link out. Because obviously the link is now changed because I had to switch live streams. If I stop a live stream, I've only got like 30 seconds or something to change it. Um, or like get into the same live stream or the live stream closes, which is really annoying if you think about it for this type of technical issue stuff. But whatever. It is what it is. I have to edit this post as well. Edit community post. So I'm just doing some live editing of some posts that I put out, just so people have the right link now. And I haven't done anything on Discord either. Oh my God. Oh my God. That's intense. Like camping. Like what type of camping are we talking about here? Like playing an RPG camping or camping in the wilderness? First live stream of the year for 2025. Camping, intense. Okay. Yeah, I guess it's a bit like camping. That's a really good, once you go live, there's no going back. You need everything to work beautifully. Puns, mystery, puns. Ah, my God. I've got so much to learn for IS. So much to learn. All right. I think I have resolved everything now. So, where was I going with this? I was saying before that 2025, I'm doing more live streams. I'm also going to be demasking in 2025, which may come as a shock to some of you, may not come as a shock to some of you, especially people that have kind of uh, been there on Patreon and seen some of the discussion that's going on over there. So yes, it is true. You will see this face. The mystery behind the mask will be gone. There will now be a mystery behind the person, the visage, as they would say in French. So yeah, those are the two big things that are coming in 2025. So do you see? Do you see? Yes, I see. Yeah, those are two things that are coming in 2025. So like, let's just play the game as we see it, shall we? Kind of like this live stream. I did have people viewing it and now they've been kicked off, which is really unfortunate. But it's me and you for IS all the way, baby. So yeah. That's basically all I wanted to talk about for 2025, unless people had questions, but there's not really anyone on the line at the moment. But yeah, I want to talk about this concept called post-scarcity society. Like the good old days. Yeah, I know, right? Tell me about it. Yeah, I want to talk about this concept called post-scarcity society. Now, post-scarcity society, um, from what I understand, is a world where the material goods, the productive elements of society, have gained such traction that the idea that you need to kind of. Did you ask Kareem whether you can share his AI stories about it? I have. I have actually. We have talked about that. And like, yeah, he was keen to share that. Actually, he wanted to share that in the Discord server, I'm pretty sure. So I think it's something that I will definitely share there. I think it's really interesting. But like, there's this kind of idea that technology will reach a certain point where the cost of everything under a capitalist economic model will reduce to almost zero. And like basic material goods, so your sustenance needs, your security needs will be at almost zero cost, and so people will live in a land of plenty. Some refer to this as the plentitude. Okay, so I have been reading over the break. That's why you haven't seen me for a while. I actually took some time off, but over the break, a book here that is inverted, so you can't actually see that. But it's called AI 2041. Albert Wenger talks about it as well. Okay, so it's basically, this book is about 10 visions of the future. That's what it says there. I know you can't really read that properly, but I'm just showing you anyway. And so basically, this is actually someone who was the CEO of Google China. And so like, I guess they're pretty across what's going on in the tech world, and like not just across what's going on in the tech world in one country either. The two biggest players in tech today are the US and China, and this person has basically a foot in each camp. And so like their trajectory or their understanding on the development of technology in the tech sector, so the Internet of Things, is kind of, I guess, beyond most people's comprehension and understanding. And so they've devised a number of short stories. The short stories are pretty good. They are relatable and based on current technologies. So it kind of makes sense to say, okay, standing on with the technology at this point in time, so today, or written in 2021 anyway. What's it going to look like in the future, in 20 years' time? And that's why it's 2041, because it's 20 years from 2021. And like, how far would we have progressed? Anyway, he gives some interesting stories, like kind of dystopian, kind of utopian. But like at the end, kind of starts talking about like kind of massive assumption about the fact that AI technology or technology generally will reach a certain point where we have what he calls a situation of plenitude. So that is basically the idea that, like I was explaining before, technological prowess and our productive capacity has got to a point where all of the your subsistence needs and your security needs are taken care of, and then it's really up to the other kind of human satisfaction indicators to be fulfilled. And that is what I believe is completely analogous, if not exactly the same, as a communist society. And so, like, this guy is kind of, as bourgeoisie as you can get. He's like an investment kind of adventure capitalist. He's been the head of Google CEO. Sorry, he's been CEO of Google China. So he's like right in there with the most hardcore capitalists of our time. And like, he's talking about this post scarcity world like it's a thing. Yeah, like it's just inevitable almost. So I'm going to read you a little section from this book, and it's called Plenitude, a Technological Mediated Inevitability. So post scarcity, I'm using the word post scarcity in contradiction to what he's saying, and I've been very particular about the choice of that word because it kind of evokes things in modern economic theory that are very antithetical to current understanding. So in modern economic theory, everything is based around the idea of scarcity. That's why you have markets, because markets distribute goods the most efficiently and provide society with all of the things that it requires, because without the invisible hand of the market, like, you couldn't actually get in a globalized world um, an efficient distribution of all things that humans need and desire. And so, in a post scarcity sense, it kind of defies the logic of free market societies and capitalism. But this person has high hopes about post scarcity, and it's just like a technological inevitability for this person. The person's name, actually, I should say, is Kai Fu Lee. If you've ever come across this person before, or you're wondering who the hell is this ex CEO of Google China, I might just Google him quickly for you so you can put a face to the name. Here he is, the man himself, Kai Fu Lee. There he is. Hey, he's serious. He's got some hardcore profile pictures and stuff like that. So yeah, this is the man that I'm talking about at the moment, Kai Fu Lee. Now let me read you this excerpt, okay? From what he describes as the plenitude. Post scarcity describes a world where nothing is scarce and everything is free. In Dreaming of Plenitude, so that's like he looks like an ex-CEO, he does, doesn't he? In Dreaming of Plenitude, which is one of his short stories about like kind of this post-scarcity society, we encounter a future world in which countries are moving towards post-scarcity, although at different paces. Because the timetable will vary for different countries, I prefer the term plenitude rather than post-scarcity. Also, strict post-scarcity will never be achieved. For example, no matter how much technology improves, there will never be more than 20 paintings by Leonardo da Vinci. Also, premium versions of goods and services, those offering unique human value, like motivating a private like a motivating private tutor or complex or rare components and technology, like the earliest functioning quantum computers, will be scarce. But these high-end offerings will be the exception rather than the rule. Just as most of us drink nearly free from a tap or filtered water, while pollutant-free water from under Mount Fuji volcano is scarce. Okay? So he's painting the picture here that like this idea of post-scarcity is almost redundant or irrelevant in the sense that there is always limitations on some things, but rather generally in terms of what you need to survive, what you need to provide you with the sufficient abundance to make all people have a certain standard of living is achievable with our current understanding and technology. The age of plenitude, again, this post-scarcity type of world, will arrive when most things are no longer scarce and can be produced for next to nothing, and most important, are made available freely or cheaply to all people. These almost free things will begin with necessities like food, water, clothing, shelter, and energy. So he spends a bit of time in this book speaking about like how energy will, in the renewable energy age, will become like in terms of cost, a fraction of what it costs today under a fossil fuel economy. And like as the technology improves, it'll get basically next to zero in terms of its costing. Obviously, this is running under the assumption that we move away from like kind of this world where we have kind of capitalists controlling the market for profit. If you took the capitalists off the market and you planned things like energy sectors and stuff like that, there really wouldn't be a reason to have any cost when the technology is great enough or very, 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 very small cost or limited cost, because no one's actually constraining supply just for profit's sake, which is what happens in capitalism all the time. You wouldn't have to unalive people in a post-scarcity world, CEOs? Wow. Wow, there's that unalive reference again. I was shocked when I first heard it 4AS, and I'm shocked again. But like shocked in a good way, don't worry. So anyway, so like that's why he's listed here: food, water, clothing, shelter, energy, like the basic necessities of like the bare necessities of life. Over time, plenitude is a process in which more and more goods and services are provided to more and more people. As technologies advance and costs come down to grant new free indulgences every year, those are his quotation marks there, I expect that plenitude would start with these necessities and gradually expand to provide a comfortable and gracious lifestyle for all, encompassing a provision for transportation, clothing, communication, healthcare, information, education, and entertainment. Citizens will enjoy all of these benefits for free. Okay? So, if you are skeptical about plenitude, consider that even today, it's already here in certain segments of the economy. We consume all the music and all the movies we want on a device at any time for about $20 a month. You can select from a large collection of ebooks and audiobooks at minimal cost. We can read or watch the news for free. We can buy and sell stocks, no commission. We can search and access valuable information online that was once artificially made scarce and expensive. That's a really interesting concept. In the information age, obviously, information has become basically accessible to all people at very, very marginal cost, if not entirely free. You might argue that examples above, or these examples, relate to digital products only because they have virtually no marginal costs of manufacturing and shipping, which is something 4AS you speak about a lot, about the idea that you can, in certain sectors, like in social media, the production costs are virtually zero for like content creators and things like that, which is an interesting concept. Like you can make, yeah, you buy some tech and stuff like that, but you make your product virtually for zero cost. But what about real things like food and shelter? In 2020, listen to these stats, okay? Listen to these stats because they will blow your mind. In 2020, the United States discarded, I love how much marginal cost for products now because how much marginal cost is for products now because of 3D printing. Yeah, and 3D printing, like it's been slow, but like, if it really takes off and becomes kind of ubiquitous, so it becomes kind of standard across the global economy, it really will bring down the cost of production like ridiculously. And like this guy really interestingly talks about this idea of like being able to, because of the technologies we have today, produce things on an atomic level, not just like producing like material goods that we can like, touch with our hands, but we'll be able to, because of our technologies, produce things more and more efficiently because we can go atomic, and design things that will be more durable, more lightweight, more technically sophisticated because we can produce things through 3D printing and the like, at an atomic level, which will just basically change the game about how we develop all of our technologies. But in 2020, okay, the United States discarded $218 billion worth of food. Remember that number. The United States discarded $218 billion worth of food, while the cost to eliminate hunger in the United States has been estimated at just $25 billion a year. So remember, $218 million worth of food in the United States was thrown out, was discarded, was not used. $218 billion worth of food. It is estimated that you could wipe out hunger in the United States for the cost of $25 billion. That is 10 times the amount in terms of cost of food production. 10 times the amount is thrown away. And for a tenth of the cost of the food that is thrown away, you could end hunger in the United States. So like his argument in a roundabout way is that we produce like enough food, especially in the example of the US, to actually make food for everyone. And we do it at a rate which is 10 times required to solve hunger. So to end hunger in the United States. And like, it's not a secret that there is a third world country living inside the US. I think the stats are somewhere along the lines of like there's 30 million kind of people living below the poverty line in America at any one time. Basically, a tenth of their population lives below the poverty line. I'm assuming a large majority of those would people that live in a situation where they're hungry. And so I think, yeah, he's definitely painting the picture here that the productive capacity in capitalism would be able to easily wipe out hunger in the United States, if not global hunger. It's just a matter of the efficiency of the distribution of resources. Now, let me just take a pause to say, yeah, Jesus, that is crazy. Thank you, 4IS. I really, really, like, my jaw hit the floor when I heard this statistic. But like, let's all just take a moment to recognize that like this completely flies in the face of this mythology that's built up around free markets and capitalism, which is like capitalism is the most efficient distribution of resources. And like you're just never going to get a system that does it better than that. Now, like if you look at the amount of food that is being wasted, not only can you argue that like capitalism is not efficient, in terms of its distribution of resources. It might be efficient in its productive capacity, but it's not efficient in its distribution of resources. But you could argue that because it's so productive in its food, in the way that it manufactures and creates food, that it really could produce this essential element to life freely for all. Like you really could just take food production off the market. And I know that is daunting because everybody likes to have like choice and they think that the market will deliver that choice, etc., etc. And like, do you really want to put that in state hands? Because like, what are they going to do with like food? It's potentially a slippery slope. But like, if you offered everyone at least basic necessities in terms of their food intake, then like, you could still have a market on top of that. All I'm trying to paint the picture is that the productive capacity of capitalism would allow us to make the argument quite easily that food production is next to zero cost and could be distributed in a fashion that would mean that no one ever, like across the world, would have to go hungry ever again. Now, that takes me to the next fact that he just throws out of nowhere, that in the United States, there are more than 5 times as many unoccupied houses as there are homeless people. Okay. So, like, let's just fathom that one for a second. Okay. By a factor of 5, I'm using that terminology right. By a factor of 5, there are homeless people and there are 5 times as many houses than there are homeless people in the United States. So let's just quickly chat GPT that one and see what it says. As of your most recent statistics, how many homeless people are in the United States? Question mark. I love how it gives sources now. It's so good. Look at that. The Wall Street Journal, AP News, Politico. All right. So, as of January 2024, ChatGPT reckons that the United States has recorded over 770,000 individuals experiencing homelessness, marking an 18% increase from the previous years. I don't know why I'm surprised by that. This rise follows 12% increase reported in January, when approximately 653,000 people were homeless. The recent surge is attributed to factors of lack of affordable housing. Well, it's not lack of housing, is it? Okay, as we know from our friend in the book, he has dispelled that notion that housing is just not something that we have over there. So I'm not a mathematician, so I'm getting my calculator out if you're wondering what I'm doing. So let's get the old trusty calculator out. Unless there is someone who's a mathematician here and that wants to beat me to it. I'm going to say 770,000 times 5. Is that right? Did I type in the right number? Yeah. 300. So there's like roughly 3,850,000 homes in the US that are unoccupied. 3.8 million homes. Let's say 3.9. Let's round up to the nearest 100,000. 3.9 million homes in the US unoccupied. And there's 700,000 homeless people out there. So again, this guy is painting the picture here that like the problem isn't the fact that we don't have the productive capacity to create housing. It's more, again, a distribution of those resources. And so, again, if you look at kind of the argument there is that we live in a society where we can make a lot of housing, but we still have homeless people. So there must be something wrong with the way that the economy functions. So we already have a theoretical plenitude, which is what he's making the argument there. There's plenty of stuff to go around. There's plenty of food to go around, apparently, and there's plenty of housing to go around. So we already have a theoretical plenitude in 2021 for food and shelter in the United States. Imagine trying to explain this accomplishment and imbalance to humans of 500 years ago. Imagine explaining that to someone that lived in feudal Europe or something like that. That like we have like millions of houses, but we also have hundreds of thousands of homeless people. And they'd be like, what do you do with all those houses? And it's just like, oh yeah, we throw out $280 billion worth of food. Could you imagine what $280 billion worth of food looks like? Like, honestly, I don't even know how to actually quantify that. Let's ask ChatGPT. Let's see if it actually can like paint a picture for us. I have read a statistic recently that in 2020, the US discarded about $280 billion worth of food. Full stop. I am trying to conceptualize what $280 billion worth of food looks like or would be like. Full stop. Can you help me get an understanding of the amount of food that we're talking about here? Question mark. Thank you. And just for you out there, it's not 280. I said that wrong. It's 218. I know when you're getting in the billions, who cares? But like, let's be as accurate as possible, shall we? Let's see what ChatGPT comes up with here. I haven't asked it to do this. This is interesting. This is really interesting. Okay. The problem is people's nest eggs and housing portfolios is more important than human rights. Trump's decency. I think that's a really good point. Like in Australia, I know that like many people have investment properties, and like most people will rent them out, so like at least they're occupied. But there are a lot of people that actually have investments they do nothing with because like it might be too much of a burden or too much of a cost for them to actually put people in there. They can't be bothered renting them out. I knew a few people like that. I know that sounds like a really strange concept that you could own property and it still not be financially in your interest to actually rent it out. But like they've just got the property because they bought it at a time when it was really cheap. And like it's a good viable property and it's in a great location near services and all that sort of stuff. And like they're just kind of like, no, I just don't want to rent it out. I don't want to deal with the people. They'll just ruin my property kind of thing. So like, and the people that I knew that were like this, they had like 5 properties each between them. And they really just couldn't be bothered renting them out. It was just too much of a hassle for them. So like, you know, there's a problem with the system there. But let's see what ChatGPT says about this. I'm really interested. So we're trying to conceptualize what $218 billion worth of food looks like when you throw it out.
To conceptualize $218 billion worth of food, let's break it down in several ways. Factor 1. Total weight of food wasted. The Natural Resources Defence Council estimates that 1 pound of food waste is worth about 130 on average. 218 billion 1/3 equals 167.7 billion pounds of food. That's approximately 168 billion pounds of food wasted in 1 year. 2. Truckloads of food wasted. A semi-truck can carry about 40,000 pounds of food. 168 billion 40,000 equals 4.2 million truckloads. Lined up bumper to bumper, these trucks would form a line longer than the circumference of the Earth.
What?
About 24,901 miles, nearly 7 times.
What?
3. Meals wasted.
What?
The average meal in the US costs about $3. $218 billion per 3.13 equals 69.6 billion meals. That's nearly 70 billion meals, enough to feed every American, 333 million people, about 210 meals each. More than 2/3 of their yearly meals, assuming 3 meals
This is
per day.
mental.
AMA 4, food categories comparison. Let's imagine this waste as actual types of food. Bananas. About 21 billion pounds of bananas, enough to fill 84 Empire State Buildings by volume. Loaves of bread, around 16 billion loaves, enough to stretch around the 50 times. Hamburgers, 43.6 billion burgers, more than 130 for every American in a single year.
That's a lot of
Dash
hamburgers.
5, energy and water equivalent. Wasting food also wastes resources. Water, it takes 25 gallons of water to grow 1 pound of tomatoes. For 168 billion pounds, that's 4.2 trillion gallons of water, enough to supply New York City for 5 years. Energy, about 21% of US landfill volume is food waste, and it generates methane, a potent greenhouse gas contributing to climate change. 6. Monetary comparison. Military budget. $218 billion is near a third of the US defense budget in 2020.
Way.
$714 billion. NASA budget. It's 10 times NASA's budget for 2020.
Whoa.
$22.6 billion. Netflix revenue, it's more than 3 times Netflix's global revenue in 2020.
Mental.
70. Final thought. This scale of waste highlights not only inefficiency, but also inequality. While millions of people in the US face food insecurity,
This
the
is
resources
absolutely
wasted could
mental.
address hunger, reduce environmental damage, and save billions of dollars annually.
10 times NASA's budget. 10 times NASA's budget. It's almost a third of the defense budget. That's mental. I need some conversion. I need some metric conversion here because it's nice that she's done it in pounds. Can you please convert pounds to kilograms? Question mark. I use the metric system. And while these stats have been mind-boggling, it would be nice to understand what they are in kilograms or liters, depending on the facts that you have presented. So that's 76.1 billion kilograms of food is wasted. I can't get over this truckload one. 76 billion tons of food that is wasted would fit into 4.2 million truckloads. And those truckloads would stretch across the earth 7 times the circumference of the earth. That's fucking crazy. So water equivalent, 4.2 trillion gallons is 15.9 trillion liters of water. Trillion liters. That's enough to fill 4.6 million Olympic-sized swimming pools. That's crazy. Energy usage. Wow, this is crazy. This is absolutely mental. Fire. Look, I've got 4 people in the chat or 4 people online. Can you please introduce yourself so I know who you are and why you're listening? And if you're wondering what the hell we're doing, we're discussing the idea of post-scarcity society. But first of all, we found out some stats about whether or not we live in a society that has the potential for post-scarcity. Post-scarcity is like this idea that we'll be able to produce things at almost zero cost, if not completely for free soon, thanks to our technological prowess and our understanding. Greta Thunberg would be losing her mind. She bloody should be. She should be speaking to ChatGPT about this type of stuff, getting some stats, just to visualize and conceptualize this. This is mental. Anyway, yeah, post-scarcity society will be, like this place of general abundance in the material sense, because food, energy, housing, shelter, water, healthcare, services will be provided at like next to zero cost, and so they'll be available to everyone. And so like this situation has kind of been regarded as kind of pie in the sky stuff before that we could get to a post-scarcity world, because we have limitations on our resources, and we have limitations on planetary constraints, we have limitations on population sizes, etc, etc. But like that also assumes that, again, the technology doesn't really change, and our understanding of things doesn't change, but technology is like increasing in a certain way, and changing in a sense, developing to make these kind of ideas, this idea of post-scarcity or plenitude, having a general abundance of the necessities, it's not too far off this idea that we could be in that type of society with careful thought and planning. And so like to exemplify that, we've just looked at this idea that like the US already creates like more food that it could poke a stick at and throws it all away, and could end basically world hunger, I would say, if nothing else. Like food categories, meals wasted. The average meal in the US costs about $3. If they're wasting $218 billion worth of food, that's 69 billion meals. That's enough food to feed every American, 333 million people, about 210 meals each a year. More than 2/3 of their yearly meals, assuming three meals a day. And that's just the food that's wasted. That's just the food that's wasted. That's not the overall food production capacity. So it's like mind-boggling statistics if you think of it like that. Like really mind-boggling stuff. So let's just dive a little bit deeper into kind of this idea of post-scarcity and plenitude before I make some dun 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 moment connections for you. Okay, so for a millennia, human economic systems have evolved under one fundamental premise. Okay, so this is a critique of capitalism coming from like Kai-Fu Lee, the ex-Google CEO. Like I said before, top of the hierarchy when it comes to capitalists here, like the CEO of Google, and like an venture capitalist himself, an entrepreneur, an investor, all that sort of stuff. For millennia, human economic systems have evolved under one fundamental premise: scarcity. Scarcity exists when human wants for goods and services exceed the limited supply for them. Scarcity has been the cause of wars, mass migration, capital markets, and every aspect of how civilization has developed. Scarcity is an assumption made by all theories in economics. So this is someone who exemplifies capitalism, saying that scarcity is an assumption in economics, in economic understanding. Economics is a social science concerned with the production, distribution, and consumption of goods and services. The field is concerned with how individuals, businesses, governments, and nations make choices about how they allocate resources. A fundamental assumption of economics is that society's wants are unlimited, but all resources are limited. Economic models are theories about how to produce, distribute, and consume these scarce resources efficiently. The father of modern economics, Adam Smith, is always quoted as the father of economics, theorized by giving everyone the freedom to produce, exchange, and consume. So freedom, liberty, this fundamental assumption in the free market system, based on self-interest, economics will naturally balance and continue to grow. So liberated, self-interested individuals will produce, exchange, and consume, and produce this natural balance, and this economics and society will continue to grow. Okay. John Maynard Keynes shared the concern that natural balance will take too long, but advocated for using monetary policy to modulate the economy to increase demand and decrease unemployment. One thing these types of theories have in common is the underlying assumption of scarcity. In the future, if the scarcity assumption is nullified, so would these economic models. So basically, the way that we understand economics today, if you take the free market understanding, bourgeois economics, as Marxists would call it, if you take away the assumption of scarcity, which we have proved doesn't really exist today, especially when it comes to food and housing in the United States. It's not about scarcity, it's about distribution. The underlying assumptions of economics models are nullified. Economics is null and void. Economics is a dead art form, like bourgeois economics. In the future, where there is no scarcity, then all mechanisms such as selling, buying, and exchanging will no longer be needed. Money will arguably also no longer be needed. So what then? What is the economic model? Science fiction has often made the prescient predictions about the future. As far as plenitude is concerned, Star Trek provides a fascinating future vision of this. I'm not going to go into Star Trek because I don't know much about it. I believe in the very long run, an economy similar to the one outlined in Star Trek is achievable. It will be built on a new social contract that grants increasing basic services for a comfortable life while redefining concepts like work, money, and purpose, as well as the role of corporations and institutions. The new system should be designed in a way that reaches the same kind of balance found in Adam Smith's theory. If people pursue their self interest, then a virtuous cycle forms and everyone else is better. Now, if you haven't drawn this conclusion yourselves already, if you're familiar with this channel, if you're not familiar with this channel, and you're wondering why I'm talking about this and kind of going on about this idea of plenitude and all that sort of stuff, let me just say this: post-scarcity societies and this idea of plenitude, having general abundance and covering people's basic necessities, and therefore deciding whether or not money is necessary anymore or any type of class structures that are built around that, that is communism. That is communism, people. Okay, the very first people that were like kind of dealing with this idea of how we get production to meet people's actual needs as opposed to be made for a profit basis, this is the basis of communism, or this is the idea of communism. So you have here Kai-Fu Lee, the ex-CEO of Google China, one of the foremost capitalists of our age, definitely not working class. Let me just say that. Speaking about a world where he predicts that technology will facilitate an inevitable land of what he describes as plenitude, what I would describe as communism, a society where there is sufficient material abundance to meet people's basic needs, and so they're therefore not bound by work commitments anymore. So they're not trading their time for money to survive. They are basically provided for to a certain extent, and they are able to pursue their own interests. Now, many people argue against this type of thing, like this idea of this type of society, because it's like, oh, well, what are people going to do with their time if they don't pursue, a job, which, is supposed to people apparently give people's lives meaning. And that's like kind of really dispelling all of the discussion out there and the understanding that like work isn't really meaningful these days. There's a very few people out there that are able to say that they have a career, where a career is actually a passion profession that you get paid for on the side, as a coincidence, as opposed to actually having to find a way to basically survive in the modern era. I would argue that most people don't have careers, they have jobs, and they need the job so they can assimilate and integrate into society, basically buy consumer goods, and items of luxury as well, and services in order to meet their daily needs. So, like, this person's vision based on technology, and the development of the way that we, I don't know, reproduce ourselves as a society based in terms of our energy needs, our consumption habits, our service requirements. The way that they have predicted this future basically just sounds like communism without calling it communism. He's calling it plenitude. And while others would call it, yeah, like I said before, post scarcity. So, I want to really discover this idea of post scarcity a little bit more. And so, like, let's go through and do that. I would like to YouTube potentially some examples of post scarcity and see where it gets us. Definitely see what type of. Oh, whoa, it comes up. That's crazy. How will post scarcity society works? David Pacman show. 17,000. Not a bad number of views, I guess. Post scarcity economy 8 years ago. 520,000 views. It's pretty good. It's too long. A system without money. Noam Chomsky. Fully automated luxury communism. Was Rick and Morty right about post-scarcity? Maybe you could watch that. Ultimate advanced civilization. What if humanity was post-scarcity civilization? You know what? Let's try this one. Unless anybody has any thoughts about what they would like to watch potentially. Again, there are 4 people watching this, and I've only got one person who said anything in the chat. Can you please introduce yourself? Say Happy New Year, and don't be rude, unless you're tied up working or something like that, which is what we're bitching about today. So if you are working and you can't say anything, then I understand. Fine. You are absolved of having to say anything in the chat. But if you're not working, then you don't have an excuse. Fucking ads. If you can't tell, I still haven't got YouTube Premium yet. It's on my to-do list. I don't even know if I can actually watch YouTube videos today. My internet seems to be playing up, but the connection seems to be fine. I don't know what's going on there. I wonder why that is. Oh, there the connection goes. Yeah. I wonder what's happening. You know, maybe we can't watch anything today. Internet does seem to be very slow. Not a capitalist. Oh, you guys can't see that. There's Jeff Bezos in the corner and someone's called him not a capitalist. Are we living in post-capitalist society? It's a good question. Man, my internet is so slow today.
Scarcity rules the lives of almost every organism on Earth. Living creatures are all fighting for key resources like water, food, and shelter. Even plants compete with each other to get as much sunlight and nutrients as possible. But what if we lived in a world where we never had to worry about running out of things again? This is Unveiled, and today we're answering the extraordinary question, what if humanity was a post-scarcity civilization?
Are you a fiend for facts? Are you constantly curious? Then why not subscribe to Unveiled for more clips like this one and ring the bell for more fascinating content?
Scarcity means that a given commodity or resource is limited. It exists in a finite supply, though the reasons why are different from one commodity to another. In the year 2020, for example, the world was faced with a global shortage of computer chips due to silicon and lithium scarcity, which severely hampered the production of all electronics from cell phones to game consoles. But while you're not going to die if you don't have a PlayStation 5, millions of people do die every year because of food scarcity. Starvation takes hold when there isn't enough food available, and this is a massive problem across the world map. But in a post-scarcity society, this problem doesn't exist. Post-scarcity is an ideal state where people have their basic needs met without ever having to worry about any of the most vital resources running out. That means endless amounts of food, but also water, power, and plenty of housing. The good news is that with the way science is developing in many different areas, we're well on the path to a post-scarcity world. Some predictions claim it'll happen even before the middle of the 21st century. But what needs to change between now and then? Arguably, the resource we're now closest to generating an infinite supply of is energy. Much of what we hope to achieve is rooted in a Kardashev-scale-like quest for advancement, where we're aiming to master the entire energy output of planet Earth, before moving on to the output of the Sun. With fossil fuels being expensive, difficult to extract, devastating for the environment, and running out, it's clear that we need a wholesale switch to renewables. And the wheels are in motion to make that happen, although time will tell whether we're already too late. Regardless, the key thing is that a post-scarcity civilization would never rely on fossil fuels. So we need to ditch them if we ever hope to become one. Of all the alternative options, solar power is usually billed as the best bet. In the decades since the first photovoltaic cells were developed, the tech has drastically increased in capacity and decreased in cost, with the price of a photovoltaic module dropping by 99%.
I think this is a really good point to make about like this idea of post-scarcity. I was talking before about how the cost of things becomes close to zero thanks to technological increases and our understanding. So basically the productive forces themselves. And so like this solar power kind of example is really good. Photovoltaic cells, like in terms of their, not only their efficiency, but their cost has like dropped by like 80% or something like that or more in like the last decade. And so like their proliferation across planet Earth becomes so much like easier in a world where like, you know, the cost of them is like compared to what it was 10 years ago, next to nothing. And so like it can be really realistic to have or envisage this world where you can finally, you know, finally have, if you figure out the technology properly, energy production and consumption at next to zero cost. Hello, finally able to join the chat. For some reason, I've been trying to send messages, was blocked. Maybe other people are stuck as well. Yeah, well, maybe that's what's happening here. Look, I was having like a myriad of technical issues at the start of this live stream. I actually had to close the live stream down and start it again because I just had way too many technical difficulties. So I'm glad to see the chat is now working for you, Mariellen. Thank you for joining us. We're talking about the post-scarcity world, unless you have already been across all of that. So maybe I won't go into that for you because you're probably sick of me saying the word post-scarcity.
Percent between 1988 and 2018, according to research by the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. This is a major success in the push for post-scarcity, so much so that it's hoped in some quarters that eventually all of Earth's energy needs will be met by solar power alone. We might not even need the other renewable sources available to us. Solar panels are easy to build, maintain, and move. They can theoretically be installed anywhere. For efficiency's sake, a post-scarcity society might even build them in space to get energy directly from the sun, so long as it could shuttle that energy back to Earth. But despite the promising signs, we know that energy isn't the most important or immediate resource we need more of. After all, humankind lasted thousands of years without electricity. And in many ways, electricity could still be considered a luxury product. Food and water, on the other hand, it's impossible to survive without them. So the absolute minimum that a post-scarcity civilization needs to do is provide these unlimited. Without food, a human might last weeks. Without water, it's only days. Malnourishment leads to severe health problems worldwide, while dirty water supplies spread deadly parasites and diseases. These are issues that humans...
Yo, give up the rock. Happy New Year, wings of cheese. It's good to see you, mate. It's good to see you. I don't know if you've been following the conversation. We are doing well. We are grappling with this idea of post-scarcity society. And we're kind of drawing the very clear and like, you know, startlingly obvious comparison and correlation to the fact that post-scarcity society is just another word for communism, but, you know, whatever. But yeah, Happy New Year. Welcome to the conversation. But like, there's this concept that is kind of getting more and more mainstream amongst capitalists of all things, or people that are definitely in the capitalist hierarchy, about post-scarcity world that is an inevitable turn from the technological advancements that are coming out of the 21st century. And with this inevitability and I guess appropriate management, we will be living in societies where the costs of food production, housing, shelter, the provision of water, energy, and resources will be next to nothing. And in that society, will there be any need for money and all of the social structures that we have around us today? And then they go on to kind of elaborate about what human existence would be like in kind of those times, like in a world like that, and like what people will do with themselves and all of that sort of stuff, which is basically their neoliberal worldview of kind of what communism is all about. And they really are making this conversation sound like, you know, it's just a matter of getting, you know, things right, like technological tweaks here and there, and like, you know, it's an inevitability And like no one is making this connection that like this is exactly what communists have been speaking about now for like 200 years, and like what would have made, you know, Marx and Engels like absolutely cream their genes, and like they're not calling it what like we've been calling it for a long time, which is communism. But like I guess it's a dirty world. Well, I don't know if it's inevitable if people privately own how we produce. There's always going to be massive demand because people will need to provide them for them and their families. Yes, private and the free market is seems to be, and like this is what this capitalist is saying. Like they're just like, yeah, but you know, like it's the market that's the problem kind of thing, basically. Um, where does he say it? Like he said it better than I could ever say it, about this idea that it's this the market that is a problem at the end of the day, not really the fact that we can produce stuff, and like do we really need to produce anymore? Yeah, I'll have to find the quote. It's yeah. But yes, you're right. In a world where people privately gain from like production, and productive forces, then you will never have post scarcity society because people will artificially create scarcity in order to drive prices. And so scarcity is now a question in this latter stage of capitalism, let's call it. Scarcity is now an artificially created product as opposed to something that exists because of the limited capacity of human civilization, which is a really interesting point because we've never reached that before in society, and which is, I guess, the whole thesis behind everything that Marx and Engels were talking about, everything that I think a lot of socialists and communists have been talking about for a long time, is that like the market forces are able to have great productive capacity, but they also artificially create markets for themselves in order to perpetuate profit. And so until you have a system that kind of regulates the need to artificially create scarcity in order to profit from, you're never going to have productive forces or elements in society that have their productive potential unleashed to create, I don't know, worlds of abundance where people can actually, you know, live without competing with one another, and can realize, you know, self-realize their own potential as opposed to being held back so they can just be good consumers. And so like we've talked about this in like when in our discussions on historical materialism and stuff like that, that like back to the food being discarded, the numbers are crazy, but the issue is about individuals buying more than they need. Same for energy, by the way. We should talk about energy efficiency improvement, not how to convert renewable without having better energy efficiency. And this is a really good point. I was speaking to someone the other day who has just done their PhD, on energy distribution networks along the east coast of Australia. And from the way that they were speaking about it, they were talking about the fact that not only do we need to upgrade our energy infrastructure, but like the efficiency of the current infrastructure itself needs to be optimal in order to be able to basically supply the entire east coast of Australia, with power. And so like I was probing him a bit about like what the efficiency rates are, and he was talking about like, you know, in the last like 10 years or so, like when it comes to solar panels and stuff like that, they're the efficiency at which they convert solar energy into electricity has increased dramatically, and their longevity has increased dramatically too. Because I thought that like, you know, solar panels were rather unfortunate in the way that they worked, in the sense that okay, they might be renewable as in they just convert the sun's energy into electricity, and there's no I guess emissions associated with this, like that conversion. But the fact that they aren't efficient in terms of they need to be thrown out or discarded all the time he was like, no, their longevity is much better, and like in 25 years they may drop in terms of their efficiency of converting solar energy into electricity by like 20%. So you have, when you install it, almost 100% efficiency, and then its efficiency at converting sunlight into electricity only degrades by about 20% over like 20 years. And like I thought the turnover rate was much more, and then like you had to replace them maybe every 5 to 10 years or something like that, which would be a big problem from like a recycling and a waste perspective. Because if you can't recycle solar panels very well and you're just throwing them into landfill, you still got the same environmental issues. But like apparently efficiency and longevity have increased dramatically. It's just whether or not we as a society, like in Australia anyway, are actually spending the money on the best products and having optimal efficiency and longevity built into the equation, or we're just buying cheap crap, which unfortunately I have dark reservations over. Yeah, I see what you're saying. It's insane. I'm reading Dark Money. Dark money as a concept is very interesting, but a bit complex and unrelated. I'll add onto this. I don't have enough space to write. Interesting. I would like to know about this concept of dark money. I might talk to you about that on Discord. But yeah, I don't know where exactly I was at in terms of the scarcity debate, but I think I was talking about like when we've talked about the historical materialism in the past, we have spoke about this idea from Marx that like for the first time in human history, we have a productive capacity where we exceed what is required, and like that is withheld from the rest of society for a price. So let me give you kind of a concrete example. A economic crisis in capitalism is where a good that is produced cannot get to the market for whatever reason. Maybe there's an oversupply, maybe there's an inflationary crisis or a deflationary crisis, and the capitalist chooses, oh, like it's not the right cost at the moment. I'm not going to sell this for the right price, and so I won't make a return on my investment. So they hold on to stock and it never sees the market. So like for the first time in human history, we have these situations where capitalism produces all of these goods and it's market forces that stop them from going onto the market. So let's just say that like we produced, or capitalists produce solar panels. Okay. And for some reason, the cost of solar panels dropped in the time that it take them to produce these solar panels because there was a surge in the market. Instead of them releasing those solar panels and then everyone just being able to enjoy a further decrease in the cost of solar panels, they might hold on to those solar panels to artificially warp the market, or wait for prices to go back up again so they can sell them and get even more profit. Now, while that just makes sense logically, everyone's just like, yeah, but that's just business. Like kind of thing. Okay, that's just business. That's just how capitalism kind of works. You sell when the market's right, so you make the most profit. From a productive capacity and like consumption kind of standpoint, it's ludicrous. It's ludicrous that we as a human race or as a society will allow people to produce things that they withhold from us, not because for the first time, like not because people live in a world now where like we don't have this stuff anymore and people are going without because we don't have it. People go without nowadays because, oh, it's there, but like it's not going to be profitable to release it, so people go without. That is a warped way of living, like from a human perspective. Like again, if you had talked to someone from any other point in human history and you said, oh yeah, we produce heaps of food, we produce heaps of energy, we produce heaps of homes, but like people can't have it, people have to starve, people have to basically live homeless, or people can't, cook for themselves or light their own homes or whatever, or use technology because we withhold things from them until they can pay the right price for it, people would just think we're nuts. People would think we're absolutely nuts. So back to dark money. The writer mentions how concentrated wealth is and how 18 people can have $248 billion between themselves, and she mentions how undemocratic, and it's like Marx and Engels and Lenin wrote about. This is how OPEP was born. keep the oil, and wait until it can be sold at an interesting price for the producer. And apparently that is just a fundamental of capitalism. Like look, it has wonderful productive capacity. It has given us the wonders of the modern age. There's no doubting that, not disputing that. What we are disputing is whether, or not, it's logical and even ethical to have that productive capacity and hide it behind a paywall. And so, like, yes, this sort of stuff is riddled throughout capitalism. But like, if you look at it objectively, if you stand back and think, oh yeah, that's just how business works. But if you like look back at it from the outside, if you were an alien visiting Earth, and you could see all this production going on and all of these goods and services potentially being unleashed on society next to zero cost now because of our productive capacity, thanks to our technology and understanding. And we were just withholding stuff from each other, like other humans, and letting people go without just because we were worried about whether the price was right. Like, we will look back on this in the future as like dark ages. We will think about how barbaric we were as a society, as individuals, how inhumane we were to live like this. We really will look at ourselves. I know that like probably happens a lot throughout history, looking back and just thinking how barbaric everything was. But like, honestly, like, this is just, it's fucked up. I'm back, baby. What did I miss? We're just like talking about like the post-scarcity issue and like how capitalism kind of produces scarcity artificially in its later stages. It got really productive, and it like pushed things onto markets, and markets were necessary to kind of distribute goods and like make everything work. But like, it did reach a certain extent where like its productive capacity was beyond its consumption capability. And once it passed a certain point, or once individual markets pass that threshold, that balance where consumption can keep pace with production, then like, we live in a post-scarcity world, or that market exists in post-scarcity, and scarcity is only driven by artificial creation at that point. Not we are worried. These 18 individuals are worried that they can't have their 36th gold toilet seat. Yeah, that's what it comes down to. And like, that's the, like, it's funny you say 36th gold toilet seat, because it's like, how many golden toilet seats can you have? Like, how many luxury yachts can you have? How many condominiums can you have? How many luxury vehicles can you have? And how many private jets can you have? Like, you only have 2 ass cheeks at the end of the day. And so like, if you had 36 golden toilets, you wouldn't be able to go to the toilets 36 times a day. Like, I guess unless you were sick or something like that, or you just never stopped eating or drinking. But like, you couldn't go to the toilet in 36 toilets a day. And so like, there should be an upper limit on what it is that is considered ultra luxury for the ultra wealthy and stuff like that. So, when you think of money in a capitalist system, and in other systems too, where money equates to power, then the question really comes down to, it's not about luxury for these people and the 37th golden toilet seat. It's really about power. Like, at what point is enough enough? That's the $1 trillion question. Thank you, 4AS. Someone's been paying attention to my rhetoric. Now, I will finish my little rant here and continue with what Unveiled has to say about post-scarcity.
Civilization is still dealing with all over the world. So how do we go about achieving post-scarcity in food? One answer could be lab-grown meat. In the 21st century, we're beginning to assess animal agriculture differently. And while farming is undoubtedly key to thousands of families and communities, keeping livestock for meat and dairy can also be expensive and wasteful by some counts. Ongoing research by the Compassion in World Farming campaign, for example, has found that it requires huge amounts of water and grain. Plus, the space and labor needed to prepare animals for sale is expensive too. With automation, the agriculture industry is already changing, but some claim it's time to leave the fields behind for good and head to the lab. Though the idea of synthetic meat may turn some stomachs, the signs are that it could one day be the norm. with advocates insisting that synthetic produce will soon be too good to ignore. Why? It'll take less work to produce, require fewer resources, be cheaper, and might even taste better. The space saved by not farming livestock could then be repurposed, whether it's to plant more crops for human consumption or to regreen more forests and woodland. It's why so many near-future sci-fi stories feature lab-grown products and don't feature fields and fields of cows. In a post-scarcity civilization, food is literally available at the
Yes, such a good question. Who gets disgusted by synthetic meat? Hand up, me right there. Yeah, I just don't trust lab-grown stuff. Like, nature has got organic life to a T, like to a T. And like, why do we have to replicate that? Why do we have to replicate that? Can we not just change the productive processes and like make them more efficient? Like in terms of resource capacity, land distribution, all that sort of stuff. I think there are so many other variables that we could attack first without having to artificially replicate organic matter to feed populations. I think, and this is just like me with my anti-capitalist hat on again, that like it's cheaper for them, like as in capitalists, to produce meat in a lab, and so they're all jumping on that, and they're just going to try and convince everyone that this is better for the planet that way. I don't believe it. I don't buy it. I think it's a market-driven decision. They've figured out that like if they invest enough in R&D, that they will be able to produce meat cheaper than housing livestock and like caring for animals and stuff like that. And so instead of doing it in an ethical fashion, instead of doing it in a sustainable fashion, they just want to produce meat at the drop of a hat for next to zero cost, but still charge the exact same amount for it. Well, that's done at McDonald's. They made McNuggets out of pink slime. Yeah. Yeah, and like, would you trust McDonald's to be producing like high quality pink slime, or would it be like absolutely questionable pink slime? Like, you know, come on. Let's be honest here. It does disgust me, not from the idea of it. It's just, it disgusts me from the angle that it's just a market decision. They really are not pushing this type of stuff because they want to. They're animal rights activists. They're sustainability they're looking at this from a sustainability angle, a planet longevity angle, or some other like angle like that with good intentions. It's really, they have figured out that this will be cost effective in the future. They'd make Soylent Green if it was profitable. Yes, yeah, they probably would. Actually, they probably would. They'd figure out a way to make that work, and they'd market it to people.
Push of a button. The pursuit of ultra efficiency is a key part of a post-scarcity society. The goal being that everything should be available to everyone all the time. Ultimately, it's an ideal that could carry over into all types of work, not just agriculture. Today, it might be said that AI and automation is often received negatively, with fear and suspicion as it threatens to take our jobs. But if humanity was post-scarcity, then it wouldn't worry about that so much, because people wouldn't need to work anymore to have their basic needs met. Automation would then be a positive, embraced by all, producing not only the things we most need, but freeing people from their jobs while it does so.
Someone tried to scam me today.
Boo ads. Oh no, there's more of them. They're coming out of nowhere.
Producing leisure time, and it would be down to its civilians to use and enjoy that time however they wanted to.
That's the question you have to ask yourself. Right. This video seems like it's just describing communism. Yes. This is like the argument that I've been making this whole live stream now. It's like all these people talking about like this post-scarcity utopia kind of thing just sound like communists. They literally just sound like commies. Like actual commies. Not like, I don't know, Stalinists or something like that. They want to bring in some type of workers, I don't know, worker society. Like the idea of bringing in a worker society was supposed to get you to a communistic society. I'm not talking about just like a dictatorship of the proletariat here. I'm talking about like communism, an abundant society, moneyless, classless. All the people have to worry about are human problems, which are many. Let's be honest. It's just communism. The question you have to ask yourself, is it efficient for them, the capitalists, or for society? That is the $1 trillion question. Who's really benefiting from these wonderful ideas they're all coming up with? Communists without workers? How does this work? Yeah, it's funny that, like, you know, the concept of detaching workers from communists is like kind of an alien concept, but that's really what it's all about. Communism really has nothing to do with work at all, actually. It's a complete post-work society. Do you think people in the comments understand that it's describing communism? That's a really good question. That's a really good question. We would need to become post-greed and post-inefficiency civilization first. This is what I've been talking about. Hello? I.e., we'd have to like move beyond capitalism. If we have unlimited energy, we have unlimited food and water, vertical farming produces hundreds of times the amount of food using 99% less water, and desalination plants both use huge amounts of energy. That's why they aren't ubiquitous yet, at least from what I've gathered. So if we have unlimited energy, those will follow. It's just human greed that we need to overcome. I think people are realizing that it's just communism that they're talking about, but they just don't have the vocabulary or the articulation to get it there. Everyone's saying greed has to be abolished, but if you're getting rid of greed, the first place to start that is in your own hearts and homes. Okay, righty over. We need to abandon greed for that, but greed is also what drives improvement. Oh, here we go. There's a pro-capitalist comment for you. And without improvement, that's impossible. So that's impossible. No, I don't think anyone's making... I wish that a post-scarcity global society existed today. Well, sounds like a revolutionary. In true post-scarcity society, humanity would also won't have to worry about running out of money again. Insightful. All right, this will be good. Plenty of pros. Few, if any, real cons. Let's get on making this happen. I'm willing to put down 10% of my yearly income to making this a reality. It's not as good as I thought it was going to be. I don't know if they've really... I don't think anyone's put two and two together that this is basically a communist vision. It doesn't necessarily be the end of labor. Wait. It would move beyond the alienation from one's labor. It doesn't necessarily be the end of labor, but would mean the end of working to live, working for a wage. Yeah, good points. It would be to move beyond the alienation of one's labor. Yeah. And yes, ending working to live. Yes. Yes, I can understand that, but I do not think that we can get there by producing lab food. Yeah, I'm not a big fan of that idea either. I am not a big fan. Over.
In a post-scarcity world, AI isn't resisted, but embraced. And the feared unemployment crisis is transformed into the ultimate freedom of humanity. Depending on your ideology, this kind of world could either be a utopia or a dystopia. Some would welcome the idea of a society where people don't have to spend most of their lives working just to make ends meet. Others, perhaps, wouldn't like the prospect of a time where everything exists in so much abundance that no one needs strive for more. According to a study by McGill University and the University of Minnesota, using data from the United Nations, we already produce enough food for roughly 1.5 times the global population. That's around 10 billion people or so. To think of it another way, what the population is predicted to be in the year 2050. We can see then that we could already live in a post-scarcity society, at least where food is concerned, and yet we don't. Food is still produced and sold for profit, leading to unequal distribution, meaning some people continually go hungry. In a true post-scarcity civilization, this imbalance wouldn't exist. So finally, let's consider the best-case scenario, where we don't have to work if we don't want to.
I said, so there's a confusion going on here. He said in a post-scarcity society, you wouldn't have that where there's an unequal distribution of food. I would argue that this is the difference between being post-scarcity in terms of your outlook on the world and what actual communism is. Because post-scarcity would suggest that there's just no scarcity. So if we produce, as a human race, if we produce 1.5 times more food than is required to service the entire human population, that's post-scarcity society. It's just the fact that our economic system is completely incapable of distributing that, or it's actually built by design to do that. You can pick which one it is, whether it's done intentionally or it's just an unfortunate byproduct of it. But let's just go with like the fact that it's just an unfortunate byproduct. Okay, so we live in post-scarcity society, but in order to get to a society where that's equally distributed, we would need a new economic mode to do that, and that's where socialism and communism comes in. But the way that they're painting the picture of it in this video, and the way that like people are describing this, in like bourgeois economists and like the actual bourgeoisie are describing this type of world where like this is all going to happen, post-scarcity kind of thing. The way they are describing it is in a communistic style. They're making like a real utopian thing about this, like it really could actually happen, and it would be like all wonderful and everyone would be holding hands under the rainbow and stuff like that. Yeah, but that's the trap with these tech bro types. Got a problem, our tech will tech the way out of the problem without addressing the symptom of the problem. I would suggest that the supply isn't an issue anymore. That doesn't necessarily mean we've sorted out our demand or how to distribute it correctly. Yeah, 100%. 100%. Like, I think we're actually, halfway into a post-scarcity society for the most part, especially for the essentials. It really is just about distribution. And like, capitalism has got us so far, which is nice. It's got us to a certain point where we are able to produce and create at this level. But it's obviously failing us now. It's obviously failing us now and stopping us from being able to do what we need to do to advance as a species. And it all boils down to the unequal distribution of things. That's what inequality is really all about.
All of our energy needs are fulfilled, and we never have to worry about going hungry or running out of water. What would people spend their time doing? Without such a pressing need for paid employment, perhaps we'd see an increase in volunteering, or in people pursuing their creative interests. But also, humanity would no doubt still be seeking to advance. Even at a post-scarcity level, there would be new things to discover, new places to visit, and new technologies to develop. There would then still be roles for people to play in pushing society forwards. It's just that they'd be free to play those roles without having to worry over things like the household bills or the food in the cupboard. One of the most...
Hello? Is this guy reading from the Communist Manifesto? Like, what the hell? Seriously.
Most exciting implications of post-scarcity would surely be in space travel, where an advanced enough society could take its infinite resources to other moons, planets, and galaxies. Suddenly, spreading out across the universe would appear far more achievable. We'd have instant power, as much synthetic...
Why is everyone so obsessed about spreading across the universe? Like, seriously. Like, can someone answer that question for me? Like, the Earth isn't that bad. And like, we can't even manage ourselves on this planet. What makes us think that we're going to manage any other planet any better? Like, Earth isn't completely fucked. And it's not like an absolute, like... Yeah, it's not an absolute loss. We can still turn things around. Like, why is everyone so obsessed with going to other planets? Like, honestly, like, this isn't just about like the age of discovery where we were discovering new lands and stuff like that, like, and just going to different places. I think it's a trap of the capitalist mindset. It's really about like going to other places to exploit them for resources and stuff like that. Because it's Elon Musk's idea. Yeah, pretty much. It's just like, ooh, everybody just loves Elon Musk. And so he said that we can go and like build a settlement on Mars. And so we're going to do that. Yeah. Like people idealize big capitalists like so much that like if Elon Musk says something, then it must be the right thing to do, I guess. That's the whole point of there is no planet B slogans. There isn't though, like there really isn't. Unless we're going to start defying the laws of physics as we know them, like traveling faster than the speed of light. Like it's just a stupid conversation to be having. Like it really is just a stupid conversation to be having all of this type of stuff. And such a waste of resources. Like that's why we have a monetary system. So like the rich and powerful can accumulate ridiculous amounts of wealth so they can direct their resources at like legacy goals, like having their name put as the founder of some colony on Mars or something like that. We haven't gone that far away from colonialism, but guess what? Capitalism and colonialism go hand in hand. They want vanity projects. Thank you for articulating that in 3 words. I was trying to say that over a number of paragraphs. Thank you. Vanity projects.
Food as we needed, and fully streamlined automation to make sure everything went off without a hitch. It would be a world where everybody is free to follow any lifestyle they wanted to. And that's what would happen if humanity was a post-scarcity civilization.
What do you think? Is there anything we missed? Let us know in the comments. Check out these other clips.
Let us know in the comments. Yeah, well, your comment section was incredibly under insightful, limited in its insightfulness. They don't want to check out this Rick and Morty post-scarcity one. Let me know. I haven't actually seen this episode in season 6. I've heard of this. Shrekonomics 101. How will post-scarcity society work? Yeah, I'm ideologically opposed to these ideas, so I'll just steal them. Yeah, because it becomes more and more obvious as technology increases, which is basically what communists have been saying for like ever, which is just like, but we have the technology to do this. We just need to plan it now. And like everyone's just like, no, the market's the only way to go. And it's like these technologies are like starkingly staring people in the face now. Like we could actually pull this off where you have next to zero cost of doing things, and let's just give it to people for free. And they're just like, oh yes, we'll just call it post-scarcity society. And then we'll question like, what are people going to do with themselves? Like people have already been having these conversations and they call themselves communists, God damn it. But they are ideologically opposed to it, which is the real thing, isn't it, for us? God, I hope an ad doesn't play really loudly. Do. The David Pakman Show.
Gray has been featured on the Discovery Channel, Vice Motherboard, CBS News, The New York Post, and Psychology Today. He is the CEO and founder of SeriousWonder.com. Gray, we've been covering the changing landscape of work. We've been talking about automation-related unemployment and sort of post-work society and how that might impact society as we know it. Today with you, we're going to talk about post-scarcity, which is a related but different idea. For people who may not be familiar with this, what are we talking about when we talk about post-scarcity?
Well, David, what we're really talking about here is a time period after automation sort of takes over. I've called this the sort of bridge between automation and post-scarcity. And when we think about post-scarcity, what we're thinking about is using 3D printers to print food and clothing and organs, having access to
automation.
automated robots that can do the hard labor for you, and creating a society that is has abundant resources, basically.
And when we talk about abundant resources, we're not saying necessarily that scarcity will be eliminated for all consumer goods and services, right? I mean, I think are we generally speaking about sort of basic survival needs are met for a significant portion of the population, or to what extent are we saying we are moving beyond scarcity?
Well, there's a long history in post-scarcity thinking. I mean, of course, the Venus Project is the first thing that comes to mind, but you also have to remember that Buckminster Fuller, his work as a futurist, his work was trying to get sustainable housing for every single human being on this planet, and he wasn't necessarily successful.
Yes, he is a cyborg. Thank you. I was just thinking like he's like a replicant from Blade Runner or something like that. Like we should do a void comp test on him just to make sure he's human. It's crazy. It's crazy. Thank you, Wings of Cheese. He's a replicant. We're talking about these new ideas. No, what are you doing? Don't read Karl Marx. Yeah, I know, right? What is the Venus Project? That's like I think someone in the comments in the other one was talking about the Venus Project. He's the villain from Blade Runner. He is. The Venus Project. The Venus Project is a 501 non-for-profit organization founded by architect along with partner. Develop a resource-based economy for human beings using technology. Sounds like communism. Oh, look at that. Look at that futuristic society, eh? Whoa, whoa, whoa. Oh, wow, it's the actual website. We are entering the Venus Project. Dedicated to designing human habitats that simultaneously enhance human well-being while remaining fit to the carrying capacity of Earth and local ecosystems, accommodating multiple resource scenarios and resilient to catastrophic event. Those new materials, new sources of energy, new construction methods. Resource management and problems such as war, poverty, crime, climate change, ecological destruction. So it doesn't really talk about changing the social fabric as opposed to just the environments that we live in. No civilization will prevail in the long term without acknowledging that the enhancement of human well-being depends first on alignment with nature. It's just changing the built environment. Ugh. All right, let's go back to our friend the replicant.
Doing that, but he planted the seed for what we're dealing with right now. And I think what happened is the 3D technologies, the asteroid mining, those kinds of technologies, those are the things that are going to change the game completely. And what I mean is that when you have abundant resource, right? If you have abundant raw material, you can provide for everyone, and the price falls dramatically. You have to think about cell phones. Right now, there are 6 billion cell phones on the planet. I mean, think about the difference between even 5 years ago, the reach that technology has had and how it's changed the world.
So there's a few sort of layers here, right? I mean, even with fully automated.
See, that's like the myth of capitalism right there. That it's just like, oh, well, like, if there's just enough of it, the prices will drop kind of thing. But like, again, there's artificial scarcity built into the system. They will hold back when technology drops to a certain point or the cost of producing something drops to a certain point. They will artificially create scarcity in a market to ensure that they can keep prices up and keep profits going. So like, just because you have abundance doesn't mean that you are living in a world where it's kind of zero cost and everyone gets something freely.
Production, you would still see potential limitations in terms of raw materials, the energy required, If we think about the current way in which we produce, even if we were to replace people with robots, we would still have significant environmental impact from producing in a way that would eliminate scarcity from so many of our common goods. So how are those factors sort of thought of when we think about a post-scarcity world?
Well, it's interesting. I understand the frame that you're putting that idea in, but
Yeah.
what I'm asking people to do is back out of that frame, because I think what we've done is we've stepped into a direction that's not going to be successful in the future. What I'm asking people to think about is reframing and putting a new scaffolding on the idea of a post-scarcity world, really. The easiest way to explain this is to say that if every person decentralizes the process of manufacturing their basic needs, right? So let me just break that down for you. So first of all, imagine being able to have solar and wind power at your house. The house itself is 3D printed with local materials using sand or dirt or whatever's right at your location. And the 3D printer that you're using can print another 3D printer. I mean, that in itself is the change point for all of this. When a 3D printer can print another 3D printer that can print anything, then all you have to do is get the raw materials to your location. And that...
Hey, this is a very androgynous look, isn't it? Look, this is a little bit more fanciful. Like he's talking about like this world where 3D printers will print houses and, you know, using soil, and we'll be able to 3D print other 3D printers that will create more 3D printers, and everyone will just print everything. Like that's like, you know, that sort of technology is far off in the future. Like it's not happening in the next 20 years. But like we're talking about like right now, we are grappling with the idea that we could have a post-scarcity society in actuality, because we produce more than we consume. It's just distributing that. So like we don't even have to go there to like, you know, everyone just makes a house by digging a hole in their ground and mining like local soils or something like that. Like that sort of stuff is pretty futuristic. We're already there. We're already at post-scarcity. It's just whether we acknowledge it or not. I don't like this video, just saying. I'm not feeling it David Pac-Man show. It's David Pac-Man. I'm gonna give it one more crack. Noam Chomsky. What's this? 10 minutes. Let's give it a go. This is the Trekonomics one. I'm not a Star Trek person. I really am not. But like, apparently, you know, they live in some type of communistic utopia kind of thing where they just travel the world and want to increase their knowledge and understanding because everything is provided for them by a 3D printer, basically. So let's see if Star Trek is kind of... No, I'm not going to go there. Let's have a look at this, the Rick and Morty one. Gnome. Do Gnome? Really? Okay, fine. Let's do Gnome. I used to like Gnome a lot better than what I do. Yes, scarcity is made up. So obviously the problem is not properly phrased, is it? No, it's manufactured. And who better to tell us about manufacturing things than Noam Chomsky?
Well, let's see. Tell me, is this at too high a level of abstraction? You mentioned that this, everything you're discussing here is based on a system of money. Can one conceive of a system operating without money?
Are we on? Yeah. Yeah, I think that we're talking about very concrete questions. Can we think about a different social order? Yeah, I think we can think about a very different social order. Getting rid of money is one part of it, which I don't think is the crucial part. The crucial part is getting rid of tyranny. We happen to be living in a system which would have driven the founding fathers up the wall, and which any Enlightenment figure like Adam Smith or someone would have found horrendous. It's a tyrannical system in which power is more and more going into the hands of totalitarian structures which are unaccountable, namely private corporations. As has long been understood, these are tyrannical structures. They are like totalitarian states. They combine in the command center judicial.
Can we just stop to explain what he's talking about here? You don't like him as much as you used to. Why is that? Huh. I think he's changed in his old age. Like when I say old age, like I mean like he's on his deathbed, he looks like these days. I'm just skeptical of some of the stuff that he talks about. You're either pro Parenti or you're pro Chomsky. Yeah, that's like the hardcore lefties, the commie lefties versus the liberal lefties. I'm just skeptical of some of the stuff he talks about. Like let's call Chomsky a gateway drug. He's a great gateway drug into like leftist politics and understanding. But like he's become institutionalized, I think. And like he doesn't always stick to his values. Like he talks about like tyranny and like liberal societies, and he talks about being an anarchist and stuff like that. But like he's all for if the situation suits to abandon his anarchist principles and his beliefs and his values for people just to comply with certain orders and stuff like that. That was on display largely during the pandemic. I heard him speak about some stuff about like forcing people, holding people down to have vaccines if you have to and stuff like that. And like, I just thought for an anarchist, it was pretty hardcore of him talking about physically coercing people to do things. So like I just was a bit worried about like the way he's been institutionalized. Like he's part of the establishment. Like let's be honest. Like I've heard people say that like he's a agent of the CIA and stuff like that, which I think is like really unlikely. But like at the end of the day, he is in MIT. He is like the CIA are all over MIT like a rash, and like he's met and he rubs shoulders with like some of the most powerful people in the world. So like while he is generally, a renegade or like a rebel to a certain degree, like he's still very close to some very, very powerful people. And so like he isn't as radical as he could be. Like imagine having his brain. Imagine having access to the knowledge that this man has access to. And like you'd have to ask yourself, has he used it always for the best purposes? Or is he kind of just like, done what he's had to do kind of thing? And like kind of played within the safe boundaries. It just makes me, that's the only thing I question about Chomsky. He's like kind of a safe radical, if that makes sense. Which is not a problem. Like he's enlightened a lot of people. I just don't think he's kind of revolutionary enough, if that makes sense. But I still like him. I just question him more these days. Sorry, I pause this to say that the idea of totalitarianism and corporations. So a totalitarian structure, like, Nazi Germany, Stalinist USSR, like they control like every element of society kind of thing. So like, Big Brother is watching you. You can't even have thoughts that are outside of what is dictated to you by society. And if you do, like, they'll come and take you away in the night. Like this idea that a corporation runs like a totalitarian structure is like so bang on. That like it's almost hard to see that when you consider what totalitarian is on a societal wide level, like in an authoritarian regime, like under Hitler or something like that, it's kind of hard to look at corporations the same way ever again, because corporations are just totalitarian structures. They tell you how to think, how to act, what to say, even like what you dress like and stuff like that. Like, I know this is just business principles and like their core values of an organization or something like that. You can't say anything, you can't do anything without reprimand. And like, if you don't follow the rules and you don't follow the culture and stuff like that, you're fired, you're out, like, kind of thing. Like, whereas in, like, you know, an authoritarian society, they might send you to the gulag or shoot you or something like that. They obviously don't shoot you in corporations, like in Western societies anyway. I don't know what happens in other places in the developing world. But like, once you look at totalitarian, like, corporations as totalitarian structures, you'll never be able to look at corporations again the same way. And there's this guy, I'll have to find the name of them again. No, I can't remember what they're called, what their name is. But they talk about, like, America is an inverted totalitarian system where you have like the corporations that actually run the country and tell people what to think and tell people like how to act, and they control the laws and the regulations. So they actually, it's a corporate or inverted totalitarian structure that they live in, and like everything is given to people, like everyone is directed, and like there is total control. It's just done by a corporate structure as opposed to like a governmental body or a bureaucracy or an individual dictator or something like that. It's just done by a group of corporations that kind of control the game and like allow each other to rule every like 4 years or something like that.
And executive powers, they're pretty much unaccountable to anyone. They're huge in scale by now. They were created for distorting markets, and they carry out extreme market distortion. Like they internalize risk. They free participants from market discipline, and they have a million other ways of undermining markets, whether one thinks markets are good or bad. In any event, these are tyrannical systems which have no right to exist any more than other tyrannical systems, and they have an extraordinary effect over life. I mean, they are the media. When we talk about the media reflecting their interests, that's, you know, like saying, I reflect my interests. Yes, of course they do. It's not just the media, it's the entertainment industry and, you know, advertising and so on. This is all a reflection of a network of private tyrannies. They have an overwhelming effect on government. They don't like government because government has a defect. It's partially influenceable by the public, whereas GE is not influenceable at all. So they've been trying to create for 50 years, they've been trying to create a mood of anti-politics, you know, hate the government. True, we have the government pretty much by the throat, but it's not totally. Those guys out there can still influence it. So let's get them to hate the government, in particular to hate the federal government. State governments aren't so bad. They're small enough so we can really run them totally. Federal government is fairly large, and, you know, you can't kick them around too much. That's the point behind the devolution, getting things down to the state level. Under some circumstances, it might be democratic. Under these circumstances, it's anti-democratic. You move things down to the state level, and even middle-sized businesses can tell them what to do. It's at the government national level. Well, okay, maybe, you know, Microsoft and GE, but not small guys. So let's get power down. Decision when you take, say, AFDC, any kind of so-called welfare system, you put it down to the state level, you're guaranteeing that it's not going to go to poor people, because at that level, even middle-sized businesses can insist upon regressive fiscal measures and shift in the tax code and this, that, and the other thing, which will mean that the money goes to the rich. At the federal level, it's harder. You're pushing around the bigger things. So the idea is reduce the federal government, except for the parts that work for us, and those increase, like the Pentagon, say. So increase that one, because that works for us. But cut down the parts that work for anyone else, go down to the state level, reduce them even further, put even more decision-making into the hands of private, unaccountable power. That's the core of the system. And that's what's got to be dismantled, totally. I mean, it has no legitimacy. Comes out of the same intellectual roots as fascism.
Corporations are individuals in law anyway. That's a good point. Yeah, they've actually designed the legal system so they can act as immortal individuals. Dark money also goes into this too, with what Noam is talking about. I have to read this Dark Money.
and bullshit. I mean, it has no, that's the core of the system. And that's what's got to be dismantled, totally. I mean, it has no legitimacy. Comes out of the same intellectual roots as fascism and Bolshevism and ought to be dismantled the same way. Where you go from there, well, you know, there one could discuss. There are lots of ways in which you could have a democratically run society. And it's worth discussing and thinking about. But the existence of money, it seems to me, is a side part of it. Maybe money should be part of a decent society. Maybe it shouldn't. I suspect it probably should. Some form of means of exchange. But it's kind of like a technical question on the side. The real question is tyranny.
Look, it's a good point. Like, I know I've criticized Chomsky recently, but like it's a very, very good point. Like, I don't think the question comes down to money as such, because money has existed like for thousands of years now, existed in many different forms as well. It's an accounting measure. It's a way to exchange value between different parties. It holds a purpose. It has a use value in and of itself. What the problem is, though, and increasingly under a capitalist system, is that, like, compared to other systems, that is that money equals social power. And like, because money is a measure of value, as opposed to just being a value in and of itself, because it measures value, it's infinite. So like, you can actually have infinite amounts of money. And now that like you don't have cash, you have digital money, you can literally have an infinite amount of money out there. You could just print money forever. And whoever gets a hold of money is able to use that to obviously get what they need and what they desire. And if you have enough of it, you could literally do anything. You could literally buy anyone or anything, because you can measure everything in value of some sort, and you can measure it in monetary terms. So if you had unlimited money, you would have unlimited power. And so yes, in the capitalist system, when things are done for profit innately, like it's the actual purpose of every interaction, or all interactions, social interactions, can be derived from the need for profit, or the motivation being profit. In that sense, then money is a form of power, or complete power. Like before, in other systems, power was power. People that had control over the means of violence were powerful, or people that had a social status due to the fact that they were, I don't know, charismatic, or they were influential, had power. But now you can just have power, and like unlimited power, from money. And so like in another social system, money might revert to like kind of a backseat issue, or like, yeah, like he said, like he explained, just revert to being a measure of exchange, or for the purposes of exchanging things only, as opposed to being an element of social power. And so like, yeah, money isn't really the problem. Okay, like I said, money has existed for centuries, thousands of years. And like he aptly notes, it probably will just continue under some other form of society even. Like, just because capitalism disappears doesn't mean like money would disappear. You still need means of exchanging things. What needs to disappear is the way that capital works. I know we've talked about this a lot, so I won't bore you with this. You're probably used to it now, but for those of you who haven't heard me say it like this, capital is not just money. Capital takes many forms. Capital takes the form of goods. It can take the form of labor power. It can take the form of money as well. It can take the form of like credit. It can take the form of services. But like capital, to be capital, must be in motion. It continually moves. So capital is invested at one point. It creates more value. It needs to be realized. So it needs to be sold on the market to create more value in the money form than went into it at the start. And that's the basis for profit. But capital itself needs to be in circulation. And because there's always this movement that must happen under capitalism in order to realize profits, capital is a dangerous system from that perspective. In order to have commodities, in order to have goods, like things that people actually need, it must be moving, i.e., it must be making profit. And like, profit is a problem under the capitalist system in the sense of, yeah, okay, fine, it motivates people, it gets things done, it helps allocate resources, it helps allocate labor power and getting people to do things that they wouldn't do ordinarily. So it's a great motivational factor. It's a great flavor in the system. But profit, like moving things around and putting things into motion just for endless accumulation, so ever expanding and increasing things, is problematic in the long run. It is problematic in the long run because it needs to compound at a certain rate and needs to basically expand, ever expand, and that is unsustainable. That is unsustainable. Like we've been speaking about now for like 2 hours, we've reached a point where our technology and our understanding produces more than we can consume. So now we are producing more than we could ever need, or like that we could realistically need as a human race, but we keep producing more anyway. And so we're stuck in this, like, you know, this spiral, and we're going out of control. And that is unsustainable. It's unrealistic, and it's causing massive environmental and social problems, because like people just are consuming out of control, and it doesn't bode well for humanity and the planet, basically, when you have a system like that where profit is the end game, because you need to make sure that capital keeps moving. And so like, take away that need for that capital to be in motion like that, as being like the primary reason we do stuff, and like, let's just put labor motion in, like labor into motion anyway. Let's get people to do stuff without a profit motive. Let's get resources allocated. Let's get food produced. Let's get housing built. Let's get energy produced and consumed without that ever expanding capital and profit motive. And like, you've got a completely different ball game. And it's not, like I said before, it's not like we don't have the technology and the understanding to actually produce this stuff anyway. We have it. We're producing well beyond our needs anyway. We are in technically a post-scarcity society. Technically, we just don't have the means, or we don't have the, we are purposely not distributing that stuff anyway. We're purposely holding things back from distributing things equally, so everybody gets fed, everybody gets housed, everybody has access to the services they need to have a, not only like a sustained existence for their survival, but like for their security purposes too, like to feel like they're comfortable and feel like they've been provided for. And so like, we live in a post-scarcity society now in many ways, like in many various markets. We just need to make sure that we're distributing stuff properly. And liberal societies are failing us. Like, liberal societies are failing. Like, we are having a political crisis at the moment where governance has stopped. Governments are failing to work as effectively as they have been, like for the last 100 years, especially since like World War II, because of the degradation, I think, of the social welfare state by years of neoliberal banditry and pillaging. And so no one has faith in the government system anyway, so the political process. And so liberal democracies are failing because like they can't actually institute any plan for the future, because everyone's just worried about being elected the next 4 years. So it's just the next 4 years, just the next 4 years, just the next 4 years. And so we're caught in this political feedback loop where like society doesn't plan for anything. It's just about consuming and getting reelected. And so we are at a point now, if we have the productive capacity to do something, but we can't plan for anything, the logical conclusion I find is we've got the productive capacity, we've got the technology, we need to just be planning economies now. And like, love them or you hate them, because I know my audience is divided on this one. Love them or hate them, the Chinese are doing this really, really well. And liberal society is in dire straits because the Chinese don't have the same liberal philosophy as Westerners, but they have the planning down pat. And so economically speaking and politically speaking, they are killing Western liberal democracies right now. They are killing it, and they're killing capitalism. And when I say killing it, they're not out there beating with a stick until it's dead. Like, they are beating Western societies, Western liberal societies at capitalism. They're doing capitalism better than liberal democracies are. And it's because they're planning stuff. They're melding planning with free market ideologies, and they're picking and choosing which ones work better. And like, that's just a good system anyway, where you actually pick, horses for courses. You pick the right system for the right situation. Sometimes you need a bit of free market dynamics. Sometimes you need a bit of planning to make sure things get done. And if we're in liberal democratic societies, in the Western sense anyway, are hell-bent on just having the free market dictate everything and allowing corporations to run wild without planning for things properly, we're screwed. We're completely screwed. And in a post-scarcity world, we're just going to be wasting stuff. We're just going to be wasting stuff. Like earlier in the discussion, we talked about how much food we waste, how much housing goes unoccupied and stuff like that. We're doing ourselves a massive disservice as a species and individually at the moment by not realizing that we have to start planning stuff. We have the capabilities to do much better, and we're stuck in this fantasy that the free market is just the best way to go. It's really unfortunate that we're stuck in this fantasy, but that's why we're revolutionaries, and we're going to keep on fighting and learning from Chomsky and co. So look, I'm going to leave it there for today. Thank you so much for joining me, despite all of the technical issues that we had earlier. My God, that was painful. I'm going to have to figure these out, because I got this fancy new webcam. I got it as a very, very nice gift. And I think that was causing me technical problems before. So I don't know what's going on there, but I will fix my technical issues, and I will be back with another live stream tomorrow on Twitch tomorrow. Then we'll do Twitch Thursday, and we'll do YouTube again on Friday. And so, yeah, Happy New Year. Welcome back. I hope you had a good, kind of break. If you had a break, and you're ready for a big 2025, because we're going to ramp up this movement, and we're going to revolutionize humanity, and we're going to do it one step at a time. So thank you for joining me today. And thank you for commenting, Mariellen, Wings of Cheese, 4IS. Thank you for providing me with emotional support during this live stream. I really appreciate it. And to all of you who have just been watching in the background, not commenting, hope you've enjoyed yourselves. Until tomorrow, when we do another live stream, please remember, I am, you are, we are MysterE. See you around.